All right. Good evening. My name is Turner Bitton. I'm the I am the chair here at the Glendale Community Council. Can you tell I've been doing a lot of live streams for different groups? Tonight, we're joined by representatives of Housing Connect, where we'll be talking about Section 8 housing program and different resources that are available both for renters and for landlords. I'm going to turn it over to Cody Egan, our treasurer, to introduce our guests tonight. Cody, do you want to introduce folks?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for everyone for joining. Tonight we'll be having Liz Brady, and she's the Housing Choice Voucher Director or Section 8 Director, and then Kristen Lindsay, who is the Eligibility Supervisor, and kind of helps with the paperwork and getting on that. And so they'll be doing a presentation briefly, and then we'll have a question and answer portion after that we encourage Glendale residents and landlords that want information can post on the Facebook too under the live link stream.
Thanks. And just a couple of housekeeping items really quickly. If you're watching live on Facebook, feel free to leave your comments or questions in the chat. If you'd like to join us on the Zoom link for the Q&A section and ask your question directly, we'll post that link shortly. With that, we'll turn it over to our presenters.
So hi everyone, my name's Kristen. Like Cody said, I'm the eligibility supervisor here at Housing Connect. I'm going to share my screen, so I hope that's okay, just to give for the PowerPoint. Okay, so today we're going to talk about our two major federally assisted programs, and so that's going to be our Section 8 program and our public housing program. What my team does here at Housing Connect is just to really determine if a family qualifies for the assistance. And so just starting off, Housing Connect's mission is to connect people and communities to quality affordable housing opportunities while promoting self-sufficiency and neighborhood revitalization. This is kind of a snapshot of the different programs that we operate here. Our two major ones are going to be the top two, Housing Choice Voucher and the public housing programs. Within the Housing Choice Voucher, there are different subsets. We're looking at project-based assistance and targeted funding for veterans and families working towards reunification. And so if you're interested in applying for our programs, you're going to want to start on our website, housingconnect.org. To connect to housing, these links will take you to our pre-qualifying application. They're pretty straightforward. Apply to Section 8 means you're getting on the tenant-based Section 8 rental assistance list. If you submit an application through our website for Section 8, you're automatically going to be added to the centralized waiting list with the City Housing Authority that we have. Apply to public housing is going to get you connected to our 2 to 5 bedroom units, and then also our communities that serve non-elderly disabled and elderly household members. So on my side, when you're notified for housing, we send you a packet in the mail. So you want to make sure that you're keeping your address on file with us up to date if you do have an application with us already, or if you plan to submit one. And we are looking to see if your family meets HUD's definition of what a family is, and that is intentionally left broad. And then we're also going to verify your income if you and how HUD would determine what your income is within the area median. And so HUD gives priority to extremely low and very low income families. And so in general, to qualify for our federally assisted programs, you do have to be within 50% of AMI. And then we're also going to look to see if your family qualifies as an eligible citizen or if you have eligible immigration status. Undocumented persons are not eligible for assistance. And so that's something to keep in mind. And then if there's any previous activity, if you have been a previous recipient of assistance and you were evicted for drug-related activity, you wouldn't be eligible again until 3 years from that eviction date. If you're subject to a lifetime registration as a sex offender, you are also ineligible for the housing programs. And then if you've been convicted of manufacturing methamphetamines on federally assisted housing premises, you are ineligible. So this is just a snapshot of the area median income. You're going to want to look at how many people are in your household. And so for me, I'm a single person. And so I'm going to look at the very low income limits. That's that top one on the right. And so as a single person, in order to qualify for assistance, I couldn't make more than $30,800 a year. So we want to make sure if your income is higher, then this is how we're determining if you qualify. Quick snapshot. I got off that off of the HUDuser.gov website if you wanted to look at different counties as well. I don't know if Liz, once you have a little bit more experience with the public housing side, I don't know if you want to talk to this.
Yeah, I can go ahead and talk about that. So right now we have, I would say about 6 properties that have 2 to 5 bedrooms in them. We are currently accepting applications. Typically, once they are notified for eligibility, it can be a few months before a unit actually opens up. The same process goes for the high-rise and Valley Fair Village. Although we did close the waiting list in October of 2020 for the high-rise because we are going to be transitioning that property to a tax credit property. For the family units, they just mainly have to qualify income-wise and also household-wise. So depending on how many people are in the household will show whether they qualify for 2, 3, 4, or 5. And it's the same as Section 8, where the resident will pay 30% of their monthly adjusted income towards rent. Right now, our deposits are $150 for the elderly and non-elderly units and $300 for the family units. And the residents do have to be able to put the utilities in their name.
Okay. And then Section 8 program, this is the largest subsidy program we offer at Housing Connect. I think we have over 2,700 vouchers. So the need in our community is there. And so we want to, this Section 8, it's also, when you were talking about it, you'll hear housing choice voucher. Section 8 is what it was formerly called. And this program essentially is people have the choice of where they want to live. And so if you're notified for Section 8, you sign a voucher and then you go into the community. We cover all of Salt Lake County. You find where you want to live, and then you let the housing authority know, hey, this is the unit I want to live in. The landlord is willing to rent to me, and you submit paperwork. And then as a housing authority, we're processing that on the back end to determine if we can support the family in that unit. And so, and then the housing authority will pay the rent to the landlord, and then the tenant will pay a portion of their rent to the landlord. Like Isla said, it does cover, tenants will be responsible for 30% of their adjusted income towards the rent. Tenants are responsible for paying any security deposits, utilities, and fees associated with signing a lease with their landlord. And then these are just some of our targeted programs. So these are still Section 8 tenant-based, but these are going to be specific to certain populations. And so the mainstream program will also be called the NED program, so the non-elderly disabled vouchers. They are geared towards people who are 18 to 61, where the head co-head is a person with a disability. And then as an agency, we've identified additional preferences. And so if this meets your situation, or you're working with someone where this is their situation, they may qualify for this program. And so in order to qualify, you have to either be transitioning out of institutionalized or segregated settings. You have to be at risk of being institutionalized. You have to be currently experiencing homelessness, or if you were previously homeless but currently participating in some type of permanent supportive housing or rapid rehousing project, you would qualify. And the family unification is a referral-based program that we have in partnership with the Department of Human Services, the Division of Child and Family Services, and it is to promote unification of families, where housing, the lack of housing is a major factor in potentially the children not being able to reside with their biological guardian or their guardian. And then it also assists people who are 18 to 24 that are transitioning out of foster care. And so again, that is a referral-based program. If you are working with someone or this is your situation, you could contact Darcy Peterson. She's our contact to see if getting referred to this program fits your needs. And then we also have project-based assistance. So these are similar to public housing in that we have specific units that we've tied funding to. The tenant doesn't get to choose where they want to live. If they're being offered a project-based assistance, we offer them a unit that they can choose. We have several different properties that are targeted. So Bud Bailey is going to, there's a referral from a resettlement agency. So if you're working with like CCS or IRC, as a family, you could be referred to the Bud Bailey community. Grace Mary Manor is for single adults currently experiencing chronic homelessness and has a disabling condition. The Family Support Center is 2-bedroom families, chronically homeless, disabling condition. And then our Kelly Benson community is for 55 and older with a disabling condition and homeless. Palmer Court is a partnership that we have with the Road Home, and same with the Road Home scattered units. And then our HUD VASH, if you are a veteran receiving case management services or any type of clinical services by the Department of Veteran Affairs, you could be referred to this program. And so those are some of our targeted funding, Section 8. If you're needing to access, I'm saying the word wrong, access housing assistance, really contacting a housing authority is the place to start. So I've listed the 2 in our jurisdiction, the Salt Lake City Housing Authority and ours, those are their contact information. And then if you want to live in a different county, there is this information as well. So I think we have 18 total or something like that? This is just a couple of them. Okay, and then that's our basic contact information, where we're located, how to access our website, and then our direct, our reception line. That's all we have.
Thank you. One of my quick questions is, can you explain the difference between Housing Connect and the Housing Authority? Kind of where you overlap and where you don't overlap?
Yeah, so the Housing Authority of Salt Lake City and Housing Connect, we do essentially the same thing. They were originally established, and the Housing Authority of Salt Lake City covered only the city boundaries, but based on need, that's adjusted. And so we cover the same area, so all of Salt Lake County, and we do exactly the same thing.
Thank you. And I believe Cody had some prepared questions as well.
Yeah, I was curious if if they're on the waiting list and a unit comes up or a voucher comes up and they're currently in a lease, I guess, do they miss that opportunity because they're stuck in a lease, or can they get a Section 8 voucher currently with a new lease? Or
so I think where that would become more of a problem is going to be on the public housing side, because in order to accept the unit, they would have to move out of where they're currently living and to move into the unit that we've offered them. Unfortunately, because of funding, we would not have the ability to help them break their lease agreement, and so they would be responsible for any fees that's associated with that. Because Section 8 assistance is tenant-based and the family can choose where they want to live, if they're already in place, we wouldn't force them to move as long as the unit that they're in meets the payment standards that the family qualifies for. So the payment standard is just another fancy way to say spending limit. So how much money, based on how many people are in your household, are we able to provide to you so that we can support you in a unit? So that might be an issue. The family might, if they want to utilize the voucher, they may be in a unit that's not, that we can't support, and then they would, if they would have to make the decision if they want to move and find a new unit. But again, that would be something that the family would take on. We don't have the financial ability to support someone breaking their lease.
Cool. And then I had a question, I guess, relating to from a landlord and a resident, and I guess what are some of the biggest barriers that you see into like first the resident getting landlords, I mean getting the assistance, and then second landlord getting, I guess it seems like a inspection process. When I talk to landlords, it seems like the landlords are pretty worried about the inspection process.
So our inspection process is pretty simple. We're just making sure that the unit is safe, that there's no major risk to the family, like the windows don't lock, or that there's some type of fire hazard, or electrical stuff is exposed. I think maybe what a landlord is maybe concerned about is that our process can take a while. We try to be as quick as possible with it, but it could take, once we receive paperwork on a unit, it could take 7 to 10 business days for us to actually get out and inspect the unit. And whereas a landlord maybe is eager because they have a mortgage payment or whatever the case may be to get that tenant in, that could be a barrier. We do try to accommodate that. And so if we're aware of it, that's something my team passes on to the Section 8 department. And then if the unit for whatever reason doesn't pass, it would prevent the tenant from moving in. We do encourage tenants not to sign a lease until the unit passes, because we can't pay on a unit until it passes our inspection. I wonder if maybe landlords are concerned because the process can just take a while. Then once a tenant actually moves in, they might not see payment immediately. We pay 2 times a month, so on the 1st and the 15th. And so if a tenant moves in on the 16th, we can't pay, we wouldn't be able to pay out what we owe for that prorated portion until around the 1st of that next month at the earliest. And so I know some landlords, there may be confusion about that or any concern, but I wonder if that's maybe something else that a landlord has concerns about. I don't know, but did I answer your question?
Yeah, I guess, and then just more, I guess, on the resident. Sorry, that was the first one. I guess, it seems like maybe communication might be an issue, or like, is there time limits within the process once they get opened on a waiting list, certain time limits they have to keep in contact with?
So once a tenant, it's difficult on the waiting list because it could be several years before a tenant, especially off our Section 8 list, before they're notified. But once they go through eligibility and they sign a voucher, they are able to go into the community and start looking for a unit. They have an initial 60 days to find one. So if a tenant is unsuccessful, their voucher does expire, and so they don't have an infinite amount of time. And so if you have 60 days, you can request. Our policies allow tenants to request up to 2 extensions, so they could have another 60 days on top of that initial one. But if you're not successful, we reclaim the voucher and we move on to the next family. And so that if tenants have extra barriers, like they have poor credit history, poor rental history, if they aren't able to come or pull together any deposit and stuff, that could hinder their ability to successfully lease up.
Cool. I had some more, but I was gonna let, if Turner, is there any questions?
I have a little bit of a process question. Can you just kind of walk through the process for someone who would like to apply for the program, what are those steps?
So our initial process is a pre-qualifying app. So you would just go to our website, housingconnect.org, follow the links to connect to housing, and apply, and you can choose the waiting list you'd like to add your name to. You're going to want to know your household members, who you're identifying at that time as being a part of your family, their social security numbers, any income you have in the home. Those are the basic questions that initial application is asking for. And then once your name comes to the top of the list, we send out a larger packet. I can actually have one right here. So it's our agency, and it has a bunch of extra forms that we're looking at. We're asking for information on who at this point in time have you identified as your household? Do you have any expenses? Do you have any assets? What's your income? And then we're asking for vital documents such as your IDs, birth certificates, social security cards. You do have to sign the consent forms, the declaration of citizenship form. And so that's what, when someone comes to the top, that's what they would receive. And we give them time to fill it out and get it back to us, and then we start processing them. That process could take upwards of 5 weeks because we do pull background. And then if there's anything missing at the initial drop off of that eligibility packet, we have to allow them time to provide that information.
Thank you. And let's say someone's qualified, based either on income and their household size. What happens if, say, their income changes, or maybe someone moves out of the household? Do they have to go through the process again, or what does that look like?
No, so if they're still in the eligibility phase, they just want to make sure that they are reporting that, because we do have to make sure that they still qualify, but they don't have to complete the application again. But we would update them, remove that new family member, add that new family member, update their income. After a family is successfully housed, that information would need to be reported to their housing specialist or property manager. And they do that on the other side. But as far as eligibility, it's just within 10 business days, letting us know if there's any changes, especially if you're out looking for a unit.
Thank you. And we did get an audience question from Allie, and I'd like to ask that. She asked, are there supports available for options for folks with, say, poor credit history or felony past convictions, that type of thing? Do you provide resources and support to folks in those scenarios?
So I think on the public housing side, we have a little bit more of ability to be holistic in who we are reviewing for a potential unit. And so someone who maybe has a criminal history, we seek to get a little bit more information. We might be more flexible with that family. In tenant-based Section 8, where the tenant is renting from a private landlord, it really comes down to whether or not that landlord is willing to rent to them. We can't tell a landlord that someone with criminal history, that they can't deny someone with criminal history, because the landlord is still entitled to their own screening criteria. We on site within our agency do have a landlord liaison that could assist someone who maybe that is a barrier for them, and help advocate for that tenant to a private landlord. But as far as like financial or anything like that, no. It would be just finding a landlord that is willing to rent to you.
I had a question kind of following on that. You do say a background check for the housing choice voucher. Is that include a credit, or is that just criminal?
We're looking at just criminal, drug-related and violent criminal activity within, I think it's the last 3 years, correct, Liz?
Yeah, just changed to the last 3 years.
Yeah.
And I guess from what I saw on the slide, it seemed like a minor drug possession wouldn't exclude them from housing choice voucher.
It could if they're currently engaged and have charges.
Okay,
Which
but
would
I
be
guess
within the last 3 months.
Yes.
If they had been after 3 years, I get, like 4 or 5 years ago, then they would be eligible.
Yes. So someone with within the last 3 years, if they have a history of drug-related activity, that would deny them. If they have, and then we're also looking at, like I just said, within the last 3 months, currently engaged. So if you're currently engaged in any type of drug-related activity, that is an automatic denial.
I had one more question. What if someone's qualified for the program, they've found an apartment or they're renting somewhere, and then they need to move? Say they get a new job in a different part of the county and they need to move across town. What does that process look like for someone?
So we, the program requires on Section 8 requires that the tenant sign a 12-month lease. And so, we wouldn't be able to approve a family who just moved in and then a month later had a circumstance change and to be closer to their job wants to move from Salt Lake to Draper. That's not, that wouldn't be allowed. You would be committed to that 12-month lease. There are some exceptions to that. If a family is experiencing any type of domestic violence or there's a safety concern, we could discuss an emergency move. But because, again, a private landlord is involved, the landlord would have to agree to terminate the lease. And that could come with fees to do that the tenant would be responsible for. But no, just for a new job, we wouldn't be able to approve that. There would have to be a safety concern.
We also only cover the county. So if it's outside of the county, they would have to port to the other housing authority, but that there's an approval process for that as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Does that change after a year? Because I know some programs, is there a requirement when someone completes their first year on housing choice voucher for them to then sign another year lease, or are they able to do month to month if the landlord is okay with month to month?
So as long as the tenant stays in the unit, after fulfilling a year lease, they can sign a shorter lease or go month to month. We wouldn't require a new 12-month lease. After that initial 12-month lease is fulfilled, a tenant does become eligible to move again. But they would have to move, they would be moving and signing another 12-month lease, and they wouldn't be eligible to move again until that new 12-month lease was fulfilled.
We also don't cover any month-to-month fees that the landlord may.
So a lot of complexes the rent goes up, like there's a month-to-month fee of $150 or something like that. The housing authority doesn't pay that. The tenant would be responsible for that. We only pay the contract rent.
And through your program, is there any protection from eviction? I know you've mentioned a couple of times you don't have funding to pay for fees or that type of thing. If, say, someone is being evicted, do you mediate? Do you provide resources that way? Or is that a private responsibility of the renter?
As the housing authority, we hopefully would know that ahead of time. The landlord and the tenant are both responsible for letting us know if there's any issues going on. But because the lease is signed, it's an agreement signed by the tenant and the landlord, it would be between them to resolve it. We do try to provide resources. I know that the community action program have landlord mediation. We've referred people to them to see if someone else could step in and help resolve any of the concerns. But if a tenant is evicted and a court issues an order of restitution, it is actually an automatic termination of assistance. There is a process that we follow where the tenant can dispute the termination, but that, I guess, long story short, it would be between the landlord and the tenant. The housing authority can try to step in as a middleman, but the agreement is between the landlord and the tenant.
I was going to mention actually I actually got a new position as the housing stability specialist, which does, like you said, provide minor landlord mediation if possible, if both parties are accepting of it. But like Kristen said, there is no way to make either party engage.
Thank you. We don't have any more audience questions. Cody, did you have any others?
let's see, I wrote some down. I wanted to clarify that the wait list is currently open, right, for the housing choice voucher?
Yes, our waiting list is currently open, but that at any time could change. And so if you are in need of some type of housing option, permanent housing subsidy, I would definitely encourage you to get online and submit an application as soon as possible. Because we never know when we will need to close it. Because I was talking to our we had a meeting earlier and our executive director kind of summed it up. We have to balance the total number of applications we have and then how quickly we can actually get those people through our process. And so if our waiting list gets too long, we would close it. So I definitely encourage you to submit an application if you need housing assistance as an option for your family.
And we did just get one more audience question from Kimberly. Kimberly asked, for those here in Salt Lake City who are looking at building maybe an accessory dwelling unit, which is just a small apartment out back or in an attic or that type of thing, is there a list of requirements for landlords available, and maybe just a packet of information for landlords to access?
So I guess the quickest way to respond to this is that it has to be its own separate space. And so there has to be separate amenities, kitchen, bathroom. You can't, like, let's say you have a room that you want to rent out. We wouldn't be able to approve that if the community spaces are shared. So if you plan on building an accessory dwelling on the back of your property, as long as everything is separate, I don't see any issue as to why the housing authority wouldn't be able to approve someone to live in an accessory dwelling. But like a basement apartment would have to have its own kitchen, its own bathroom. It'd have to be able to be double bolt locked from the main residence, so that the tenant, its own separate space.
So I guess if they did do an accessory dwelling unit and it passed city code and it then had all those requirements you just said, then it would be there. It seems like no reason it wouldn't pass.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I just to respond directly to Kimberly, I put a link to the resources available for landlords on the Housing Connect website. So that's available.
Thank you.
Really quickly, I'm wondering if you would mind sharing maybe 3 key takeaways that you'd like folks who are looking at the program to take away. Maybe that's just free advice or things to consider, or 3 important takeaways from tonight's presentation for either landlords or for folks looking to rent.
So I think as far as from the eligibility side, the biggest thing you're going to want to do is keep your application that you have on file with us updated. So if you move, making sure you're logging back into the application, updating your address, or coming into our office and letting us know in writing that you've moved, because that's our primary way of contacting you. I know in October we notified almost 1,000 people. And so for an eligibility appointment, so there's no way that we would have been able to call everyone for all the mail that we got returned. And so unfortunately, those people were withdrawn because we didn't have the capacity to reach out to everyone. That's the primary one. If you don't have assistance and you are needing assistance, is to keep your information that you have on file with us up to date so that we can reach you. I think after you're issued a voucher, when you're completing the eligibility process, is just making sure that you're bringing in all of your vital documents and your assets and your income, because that's a lot of what holds people up, is that they don't bring in their social. They didn't think about it. They left it in, I don't know, in their sock drawer or wherever people keep their socials. And then they came, and then we send out a missing info letter, and then we never get a response. And so we automatically withdraw someone once that missing info expires. And it's something, I mean, there's forms like this form, pull it up. This form is a HUD form. I can't change this one, But there's a space on the back of this form people miss all the time. So making sure you're double checking every form that you signed, every form, and that all household members 18 or older signed. Because if that form, I can't tell you how many people we've withdrawn because we didn't have a signature on this form. And we mailed out a notice, no response. And then we moved on to the next family. And then I think once you're issued a voucher and you're searching, the biggest thing is keeping in mind what your payment standard is, how much money we are able to help you with, and what utilities you have to pay. But that would all be explained once you're given a voucher. I don't know if Liz has anything else to add.
Yeah, I guess a couple things, like to the clients, I would say once they're housed, the biggest thing in order to stay housed would be to follow the lease and to follow the program responsibilities with Section 8, which the biggest things is usually reporting household occupants and income. And then the other thing I would say towards landlords is it would just be really great if we can get landlords that we can build relationships with that will have units within our payment standards, and that will just work with our clients. Sometimes they do have lower income and lower credit, but our rent payment, as long as the client's following the rules, the rent is going to be, paid on time every month, and that is something that they can, depend on. So just encouraging clients to do their part to keep their housing, and then encouraging landlords, to work with us so that we can have a good working relationship all around.
Sorry, I just actually had I forgot a minor question about the income. Is income required for this, for the housing choice voucher? Because from my understanding, it's a minimum payment of $50. Is that right?
You're not required to have income, but if you don't have income, there is a $50 minimum rent.
Okay, cool.
And that $50 is per month, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any more audience questions. Cody, did you have more or?
No, I'm good. They answered all mine.
Thank you. Well, since I don't see audience questions, we did have another person join the Zoom. Dennis, I don't know if you're just listening or if you had questions, if you'd like to chime in.
I don't think I have any questions. I'm pretty well aware of the program. Hello, Kristen and Liz.
Hi, nice to see you.
I used to be the landlord liaison in this program, so I'm pretty well aware of it.
Well, Dennis, I want to hear your advice for landlords.
For landlords or for dealing with landlords?
Well, let's do both.
Be upfront if you're applying for an apartment. Be upfront with the landlord. They are going to do the background check and they're going to find stuff anyway. You're better off if you're honest. And be openly communicative. Any problems that you're running into as a tenant, communicate with your landlord and with your voucher case manager inside Section 8 so that somebody can maybe step in and help out a little bit before it becomes a big problem. And that goes for both sides, for the landlord as well, to also communicate with the housing authority, whoever's holding the voucher program, so that maybe we can step in and bring a case manager into play, whatever it is, to maybe help that tenant get things back in order so that we can maintain a healthy relationship on all sides.
Thanks.
I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Dennis. Well, I don't see any audience questions, so Les or Kristen, if you have any parting comments, please feel free to make them. Cody, if you have any final thoughts, I'd love to hear them. If not, we can go ahead and wrap up early.
I just encourage everyone to apply in a long-term view of it. And like, sometimes you don't think it's going to happen in the next year or two, but adding your name to the wait list and just doing a long view, many people, it's totally worth the wait once you get on it. And so I just encourage to think kind of long-term more. If you're not going to use it in the next year or two, it's still very beneficial for the long run.
I agree with that. But prior to our waiting list for Section 8 opened last January for the first time after it was like 6 or 7 years. And so once it closes, it could be a while before it reopens. So if you think that this is something that your family is going to need down the line or currently needs, unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about the wait right now. But putting your name on the list is really the first step, so that you're not, and potentially in a worse off situation 3 years down the line, and then there's no option because our waiting list is closed. So
Thank you. Well, with that, I think we'll go ahead and end the live stream. I really appreciate your time today. Thank you for coming. We've shared a lot of links around Housing Connect. If folks need or want an introduction or need additional resources, feel free to contact the Community Council and we'll gladly connect you with Housing Connect and with the great folks that have presented today. So thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Ailez. And thank you, Cody, for helping organize this. With that, we'll go ahead and end the live stream. Thank you all.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.